The station hung in the black void like a lonely metal star. Its corridors were narrow, dimly lit by flickering lights, the hum of machinery echoing through every hall. Outside, distant stars shimmered, but inside the atmosphere was tense, heavy with fear. RE7 was meant to be a mining station, but now it had become a battlefield. Cale moved through the maintenance tunnels, his breathing steady despite the pain burning through his side. A long, shallow cut ran across his ribs and his arm throbbed where he had collided with a metal panel in a previous fight. Yet, even wounded, he moved with precision, listening to the station like it was a living creature. Every hiss of steam, every clang of metal was a signal. Somewhere ahead, Lyra was hunting him. She was a Draxian, tall, fierce, and deadly, her long limbs moving with unnatural speed. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning for movement. Her species had never met a human who could take so many blows and keep moving. Cale had already survived traps that should have ended him. To her it was almost impossible to understand. But Cale had learned a simple truth. Survival was not about avoiding pain. It was about using it. He ducked under a hanging pipe and rolled across the floor, ignoring the sting of his ribs. His mind raced. Think. Every fight is won before it begins. He glanced at a junction ahead. The walls were lined with tools, cables, and scraps from past mining operations. He could use these. A metal grate could become a barricade. Loose wires could trip her. His body was weak, but his mind was sharp. Lyra's voice echoed through the corridor, cold and sharp. "Why don't you die, human?" she shouted, the words cutting through the station's hum like a blade. Her tone was furious, frustrated, almost personal. She had struck him multiple times already. Each blow meant to end him, yet he had survived every one. Cale smiled, wincing as pain shot through his side. "Bad habit," he said quietly to himself, almost as if admitting a flaw he would never fix. But the smile was enough. Even wounded, he exuded calm, confidence, and defiance. To survive in a world stacked against humans, Cale had learned that the mind must remain stronger than the body. Fear could be used against him, but courage, that stubborn refusal to give in, was his weapon. Lyra charged, her long claws extended, glinting in the flickering light. Cale pivoted, letting her momentum carry her forward as he ducked beneath her strike. He grabbed a heavy metal pipe lying nearby and swung it with all his strength. It struck her shoulder, forcing her to stumble slightly. Even for a Draxian, the hit hurt and her growl was audible in the narrow tunnel. Cale didn't pause. He ran forward, vaulting over fallen crates and ducking under hanging machinery. His arm burned where he had already been hit, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind him, Lyra's footsteps echoed, swift, relentless, impossible to shake. He knew she would not give up. She had hunted humans before, but none had survived like him. Turning a corner, Cale grabbed some loose cables and flung them across the floor. Lyra's claws struck them mid-air, tripping her slightly. He didn't stop to see the effect. Every second counted. He reached the ventilation shaft entrance and slid inside, barely fitting through the narrow space. He could hear Lyra's frustrated growl as she tried to follow, but the shaft was too small for her. For now, he was safe. Cale crawled through the dark ventilation tunnel, the metal walls scraping his arms and legs. His breathing was heavy but controlled. Every movement was calculated. He could hear Lyra moving above him in the main corridor, her steps echoing in the metal. She was angry now, more dangerous than before, but Cale had a plan. Humans survived because they adapted. They used what they had and turned weaknesses into advantages. He reached a junction that led back to the main station, where the maintenance rooms were filled with old machinery. Cale paused, listening. He could hear more Draxians approaching, backup. This was the moment to act. Using a loose panel from the wall, he rigged a small trap. The panel would swing outward if a door was opened, hitting anyone in its path. It was crude but effective. Cale smirked. Ingenuity had always been humanity's secret weapon. Lyra entered the room cautiously, her glowing eyes scanning for movement. Cale stayed hidden behind a large console. As she stepped forward, he released the trap. The panel swung with a metallic clang, striking her in the chest. Lyra hissed in pain, staggering back. Humans were small, weak even, but they could think. They could plan. This was something the Draxians struggled to counter. Cale didn't wait. He moved quickly, using the confusion to slip past her and into the next corridor. He could feel the exhaustion building in his muscles, his wound screaming for attention, but he could not stop. Every second he delayed, the human's chance to survive diminished. This station was not just a place to hide, it was a battlefield, and he would turn it to his advantage. He entered a room filled with old mining equipment, the walls lined with pipes and broken machinery. Here he could set more traps. A few strategically placed cables, some loose panels, and even the old robotic arms left from mining operations could all be used to slow down the Draxians. Kale's hands moved with speed and precision, setting up a gauntlet for anyone who followed him. Outside, Lyra recovered from the trap, her anger burning hotter than before. Her species were warriors, trained to kill quickly and efficiently. Yet here was a human, small, fragile, wounded, who had evaded her at every turn. She snarled, a low, furious sound. Humans were unpredictable. They were relentless. And this Kale, seemed to thrive on defiance. Kale heard her approach again. He could sense her through the vibrations in the floor, the faint hum of energy from her claws. She moved differently now, more cautiously, but her intent was clear. She wanted him dead. Humans were weak, she thought, but this one was an exception. Every instinct told her he should be gone already, yet he was still alive. He waited until she was nearly inside the room, then triggered another trap. A loose pipe swung down from the ceiling, striking her arm and causing her to stagger. Kale used the moment to slip past her again, heading for the service elevator that led deeper into the station. He pressed the panel, and the elevator doors closed just as Lyra recovered, claws scraping against the metal as she tried to reach him. The elevator shuddered and began to descend. Kale leaned against the wall, pain coursing through his body, but a small smile appeared on his face. He had survived again. He had faced a predator stronger, faster, and more skilled than him, and he was still alive. In the darkness below, he could see the old storage areas of the station, filled with crates, broken machines, and shadows that could hide him. This was where humans thrived. The Draxians had strength and speed, but humans had adaptability. Humans had cunning. Humans survived in the places others thought impossible. Kyle knew this was only the beginning. Lyra's voice echoed from above, carried faintly through the station's metal walls. "You cannot escape, human," she shouted, her tone sharp, furious, and almost personal. Kale's heart raced, but he did not fear her. Fear would only slow him down. He had survived worse. He had faced death more times than he could count. And still, he kept moving, kept fighting, kept surviving. As the elevator doors opened, Kale stepped out into the storage area. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the crates and machinery. He moved carefully, silently, setting up more traps along the way. Every step was calculated. Every move counted. He was not just running, he was preparing. The Draxians would learn soon enough that humans were not easy prey. Kale paused in the shadows, listening. The station was quiet for a moment, but he knew it was only temporary. Lyra would not give up. She would hunt him again, stronger, smarter, more determined. But Kale had something she did not: resilience. Humans endured because they refused to die. They adapted, they fought, and they survived. And Kale was living proof. He allowed himself a brief moment to rest, pressing his hand against the wound in his side. Pain shot through him, but he ignored it. He could endure more, he had to. The humans in the station were counting on him. Their survival depended not just on strength, but on cleverness, courage, and the stubborn habit of refusing to die. Outside, the station continued to drift through the blackness, stars shimmering in the distance. Inside, the human spirit burned brighter than ever. Kale's journey was far from over, but he was ready. Whatever the Draxians threw at him next, he would face it, because that was what humans did. They survived. They adapted. They fought. And above all, they refused to die. Kyle smiled, bloodied, wounded, but unbroken. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, Lyra paused, realizing that this human was unlike any prey she had ever faced. And that realization, more than any weapon, made her pause. The storage area was a maze of towering crates and broken mining machinery. Dust drifted in the weak light, making the shadows shift and dance across the walls. Kale moved carefully, each step deliberate. He could hear Lyra searching somewhere above, the faint scrape of her claws echoing through the station. Her patience was fading, and that was his advantage. Humans had survived for millennia not because they were the strongest, but because they could think, adapt, and improvise. Kale had learned this early. Every scrap of metal, every pipe, every discarded tool in the station was a weapon if used cleverly. And Kale intended to use them all. He ducked behind a stack of crates, his hands working quickly to set another trap. A loose cable looped across the floor, ready to trip any Draxian who entered the corridor. A small hydraulic arm from a broken mining robot hung from the ceiling, connected to a pulley system Kale had rigged. One wrong step, and it would swing down with enough force to knock down even a Draxian. He paused for a moment, checking the traps, and smiled quietly. Creativity beats strength every time. From above, Lyra's voice echoed, cold and sharp. "I know you're here, human. You cannot hide forever." Kale gritted his teeth. She was relentless, but she underestimated him. Every human move was unpredictable. Every tactic was new. He slipped into the shadows, moving toward an old control room. The station's systems were outdated but functional. If he could hack the lights, shut doors, or reroute power, he could turn the station itself into a weapon. Kale reached the control room and quickly assessed the terminals. Dust covered the panels and the screens flickered weakly. He connected a portable device to the system and began rerouting power to critical doors and lights. With a few key adjustments, he could isolate corridors, slow down the Draxians, and buy himself more time. His fingers moved with precision, each keystroke carefully calculated. Lyra moved silently through the main corridor, sensing the traps and noticing the subtle changes in the station's systems. She paused, her glowing eyes scanning for hidden movement. Draxians were fast and strong, but the unpredictability of humans was always difficult to counter. This human Kale was different. He wasn't just surviving, he was shaping the environment, turning the station into a battlefield on his terms. Kyle finished rerouting power and quickly tested the doors. One corridor sealed shut, locking any pursuers inside. Another flickered lights intermittently, creating shadows that could hide him. He smiled. Humans did not rely only on weapons, they relied on intelligence, creativity, and clever improvisation. These were qualities no alien predator could fully predict. He moved carefully through the shadows, listening. The scrape of claws came from above, then silence. He could hear her hesitation. Lyra, for all her speed and strength, now had to be cautious. Kale had learned that in every battle, the mind could outmaneuver muscle. He pressed on, moving toward the central hub of the station where the reactor and key systems were located. Along the way, Kale found old maintenance equipment. Robotic arms, mining drills, loose panels, and heavy crates littered the floor. He rigged another trap, connecting a dangling drill to a motion sensor. Any large movement in the corridor would trigger the drill, swinging it down with force. He checked it twice, making sure it was ready. Every trap he set bought him time, and every second mattered. Lyra's growl came from somewhere above. She was frustrated now, sensing that the human was slipping from her grasp again. She had expected a straightforward hunt, a quick chase, and a final strike. Instead, Kale had turned the station into a web of obstacles, outsmarting her at every turn. Her species relied on raw skill, speed, and brute force, but humans relied on something different. They could survive impossible odds because they thought differently. Kale moved into a small corridor near the station's storage hub. He paused, listening carefully. A group of Draxians was patrolling nearby, unaware of the traps he had set. He slipped behind a stack of crates, careful to stay out of sight. Then, with a quick flick of a switch on his device, he activated a series of alarms in a different section of the station. Red lights flashed and automated systems created loud clanging noises. The Draxians reacted immediately, rushing toward the source of the noise. Kale watched as they moved into the corridor filled with his traps. The cable tripped one, swinging the hydraulic arm onto another, knocking both down. Kyle moved silently past them, slipping deeper into the station. He smiled quietly to himself. The bigger they are, the easier to slow down. Reaching a narrow maintenance tunnel, Kale paused again. This tunnel led toward the reactor, where the station's main power systems were controlled. If he could reach the reactor and set a few temporary overloads, he could create enough chaos to buy time for the humans hiding in the station. But it was risky. Any miscalculation could alert Lyra immediately. He moved carefully, his body bruised and his energy fading, but his mind remained sharp. Humans endured because they refused to quit. Humans survived because they refused to stop thinking. Every Draxian attack he had survived, every trap he had set, every step he had taken, it all led to this moment. Kale entered the reactor room. The hum of energy filled the space, making the air vibrate slightly. Old machinery lined the walls, cables hanging from the ceiling. He quickly assessed the systems, locating the main power conduits. With careful precision, he set temporary overloads that would cause sparks and flashes, creating distractions in key corridors. These flashes would be enough to mislead the Draxians, slowing their advance and giving the humans an edge. Outside, Lyra sensed the disturbance. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the corridor. She realized that this human wasn't just surviving, he was controlling the battlefield. Each step Kale took was deliberate. Every trap was set to exact specifications. She growled, frustrated. Humans are unpredictable. They survive when they shouldn't. They fight when they cannot. And this one? This one is exceptional. Kale finished his work and slipped into another shadowed corridor, heading deeper into the station. His body ached, his wounds burned, but he could not stop. The humans hiding in the station depended on him. Their survival depended on his ingenuity, his ability to turn the environment against a superior predator. He paused near an old maintenance elevator. Using loose metal panels, he rigged a motion-triggered mechanism that would slam the elevator door shut when any large figure approached. This would delay any pursuers and buy precious minutes. Kale was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the spark of humanity that refused to die. Lyra moved again, sensing him nearby. She approached cautiously, her glowing eyes scanning every shadow. She had encountered humans before, but none had survived like Kale. She realized that brute force alone would not work. She had to anticipate his traps, predict his movements, and outthink him. But even for a skilled Draxian warrior, predicting a human's ingenuity was nearly impossible. Kale moved silently through the corridor, ducking behind crates and weaving around broken machinery. He felt a small sense of satisfaction. Each trap he set, each step he took, every distraction he created brought him closer to achieving his goal: survival and human advantage. Humans had survived for centuries in hostile worlds because they were clever, adaptable, and courageous, and Kale embodied that spirit. He reached a junction where two corridors met. One led toward the station's central hub where Lyra was likely approaching. The other led toward a secondary maintenance area where supplies and tools could be used to fortify his position. Kale chose the latter, moving quickly and quietly. Inside the maintenance area, he found old storage crates and discarded equipment. He worked rapidly, connecting cables, rigging traps, and preparing the area for an ambush. He could hear Lyra moving somewhere above, her frustration growing. She had expected an easy hunt. Instead, she found a battlefield meticulously prepared by a human. Kale paused for a moment, pressing his hand against the wound in his side. Pain flared, but he ignored it. He had survived worse. He had endured more. And still he moved, thinking, preparing, adapting. This was what made humans remarkable. Humans survived because they refused to stop, refused to quit, refused to die. From the shadows he could see Lyra descending toward the area. Her glowing eyes scanned the room, cautious but determined. Kale's traps were ready, his strategy set. He was ready for her. Humans survived not because they were strong, but because they were clever. And Kale was the perfect example. As Lyra stepped into the corridor, a loose panel triggered, swinging toward her with a metallic clang. She dodged just in time, growling in frustration. Kale moved from his hiding spot, using the chaos to position himself for the next move. Every trap, every distraction, every clever adjustment was designed to outsmart a superior predator. The station shook slightly as power fluctuations caused sparks to fly from overloaded conduits. Red warning lights flashed, casting long shadows across the walls. Kale moved through the chaos, using every distraction to his advantage. He was wounded, tired, and bruised, but he was alive, and that was all that mattered. Humans survive because they refuse to die. Humans adapt because they refuse to quit. Humans fight because they refuse to surrender. Kale was living proof of that truth. And as Lyra's frustrated growls echoed through the station, he knew this battle was far from over. But for now, the central hub of the station was a wide, open space filled with pipes, machinery, and control panels. The hum of the reactor filled the air, vibrating through the metal floors and walls. Sparks flickered along the exposed conduits as Kale moved carefully, every step deliberate. His body ached, his wounds burned, and yet his mind remained sharp. He had survived countless attacks, outsmarted a deadly predator, and now he faced the greatest challenge yet. Lyra was waiting. She had tracked him to the hub, her glowing eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. She moved with precision, her claws scraping lightly against the metal floor. She had seen humans before, but none had resisted her like Kale. She realized now that this was not just a fight of strength. This was a battle of wits. And in this fight, humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and relentless. Kyle emerged from the shadows, his bloodied body tense but his posture calm. He faced her directly, refusing to hide. "I told you," he said quietly, his voice steady. "Bad habit." Lyra's jaw tightened. She lunged forward, claws extended, aiming for his chest. Kale sidestepped, letting her momentum carry her past him. He grabbed a loose cable and swung it, tangling it around her legs. She growled, momentarily unbalanced, but quickly regained her stance. Kale knew he couldn't rely on brute force. He had to use his mind, the environment, and every ounce of human ingenuity. The hub was a dangerous place. Pipes carrying superheated steam crisscrossed the walls, exposed conduits crackled with electricity, and heavy machinery could be moved or toppled with careful effort. Kale began using the environment to his advantage. He knocked over a large crate, forcing Lyra to leap over it, slowing her momentum. Sparks flew from a damaged conduit, casting shadows that obscured his movements. Lyra lunged again, faster this time. Kale ducked beneath her claws, rolling across the floor and kicking a small maintenance drone toward her. The drone collided with her shoulder, staggering her. Kyle sprang to his feet, dodging a swipe of her claws, and slammed a metal panel into the floor. It bounced and struck her arm, knocking her balance off again. Each movement was calculated. Every action bought him time and created openings. Lyra hissed in frustration. She had never encountered prey so resilient, so clever. Every human she had hunted before would have fallen after one or two attacks. Yet Kale was different. He was not just surviving. He was controlling the battlefield, using traps, misdirection, and quick thinking to stay alive. Kale moved toward the central reactor platform. The reactor pulsed with energy, and he knew he could use it to his advantage. He grabbed a loose pipe and rigged it to swing from a support beam, connecting it to a nearby control lever. One wrong step from Lyra and the pipe would swing down with enough force to knock her off balance. Lyra charged again, claws extended, and Kale triggered the trap. The pipe swung down, striking her side. She stumbled but did not fall. The Draxians were strong, resilient, and fast, but humans were clever. Kale smiled faintly. It wasn't strength that won battles, it was thinking, adapting, and using the environment. He didn't pause. Using the reactor's exposed conduits, he carefully rerouted power to create short circuits in sections of the floor. Sparks shot up and metal grates became slippery with steam condensation. Lyra adjusted her steps cautiously, realizing the human was manipulating more than just traps. He was controlling the battlefield itself. Kyle lunged forward, kicking a loose panel toward her, forcing her to leap backward. The combination of traps, electrical sparks, and misdirection slowed her down. Kale moved through the shadows, pressing closer to the reactor controls. If he could create a temporary overload, he could disable her weapons long enough to escape, or force her to retreat. Lyra's frustration grew. She had fought countless prey, yet none had outsmarted her like this human. Kale was relentless, thinking several steps ahead, using every tool, every shadow, every flaw in the station's design. She lunged again, faster and more precise, but Kale anticipated her move. He sidestepped, grabbed a loose metal rod, and swung it at her, knocking her claws aside. Kyle moved quickly, reaching the reactor controls. He adjusted a few levers, rerouting power through non-critical circuits to create controlled sparks and flashes. The reactor shuddered slightly, sending vibrations through the floor. Sparks flew along the walls, lighting the hub in brief, blinding bursts. Lyra shielded her eyes, momentarily stunned by the sudden flashes. Using the distraction, Kale positioned himself behind a large machinery console. He observed her movements, noting every hesitation, every shift in balance. Humans survived because they observed, learned, and adapted. Every weakness could be exploited, every opportunity used. Kale smiled faintly despite the pain. This was what humans did best. They turned disadvantage into advantage. Lyra recovered quickly, lunging again. This time, Kale anticipated the attack perfectly. He sidestepped, grabbed a hanging cable, and swung it like a whip. The cable wrapped around her arm, pulling her forward slightly. Kale used her momentum to push a heavy crate in her path. She stumbled but recovered, her glowing eyes narrowing in fury. You're clever, she hissed. But cleverness won't save you. Kale's lips curved in a faint smile. Cleverness is survival, he replied. Humans survive because we think. Lyra lunged again, faster, but Kale was ready. Using the reactor's exposed conduits, he created a small gap in the floor with a panel he had loosened earlier. Lyra's foot slipped on the wet metal as she lunged, forcing her to catch herself on the edge. Kyle pressed forward, using every movement to manipulate her balance and force her into disadvantageous positions. The battle raged on. Sparks flew, metal panels crashed, and the hum of the reactor filled the space. Kale was wounded, bruised, and exhausted, but his mind remained sharp. He saw openings where Lyra overextended, traps he could trigger, and ways to manipulate the station to his advantage. Every attack from her was met with a counter, every move predicted, every weakness exploited. Finally, Kale saw an opportunity. A section of the hub floor had loose panels connected to a hydraulic pipe system. If triggered, the pipes would swing down in a wide arc, forcing anyone in the path to stumble or retreat. Kale set the trap, then moved quickly to the central reactor controls. With a few careful adjustments, he created a temporary overload, sending sparks shooting along the hub and forcing Lyra to shield her eyes. Kyle acted immediately. He triggered the hydraulic pipes remotely, forcing Lyra to dodge and stumble. She hissed, her frustration evident. She realized that brute strength alone would not win this battle. The human was controlling the environment, anticipating her every move and turning the station into a weapon. Kyle moved closer, each step calculated, every movement precise. He wasn't just surviving, he was dominating the battlefield in his own way. Humans survived in hostile worlds not because they were the strongest, but because they adapted, thought creatively, and refused to quit. Kyle embodied this truth. Lyra recovered, glaring at him. This isn't over, she growled, her claws flashing. Kale smiled faintly. No, it's not, he replied, his voice calm despite the pain. But I have a habit of surviving. The two circled each other, testing, observing, calculating. The battle was no longer just physical, it was mental. Kale used every trick, every trap, every advantage the station provided. Lyra relied on speed, strength, and instincts, but Kale relied on human ingenuity. Each counter, each move, each trap set him apart, proving that humans were not to be underestimated. The confrontation reached a critical point. Kale lured Lyra toward a set of stacked crates and triggered a series of loose panels and cables. Sparks flew, crates toppled, and Lyra had to leap aside to avoid being trapped. Kyle used the moment to move closer, pressing a small control lever on the reactor system. A pulse of energy surged along the floor, creating a brief electromagnetic disruption that temporarily disabled her weapon enhancements. Lyra hissed, frustrated and momentarily disoriented. Kale didn't waste the moment. He pressed forward, using the chaos to force her back toward the far end of the hub. He was not trying to kill her, he didn't need to. He just needed to survive, to prove that human resilience and ingenuity could overcome even the deadliest predators. As Lyra retreated, Kale took a deep breath, bloodied and bruised, but still standing. Humans survived not by sheer strength, not by weapons alone, but by courage, intelligence, and the unyielding habit of refusing to die. And Kale had proven that tonight. He glanced around the hub, noting the traps, the disabled systems, and the chaos he had created. The station itself had become an ally, a tool in his fight for survival. Lyra, realizing she had been outsmarted this time, backed away slowly, her glowing eyes narrowing. She would return, stronger, smarter, and more determined, but Kale had survived. And that was enough for now. Kale pressed his hand against the wound in his side. Pain flared, but he ignored it. He had survived countless attacks, outsmarted a deadly predator, and proven the power of human ingenuity. The battle was not over, but humans had an edge that could not be measured by strength alone. In the silence that followed, the reactor hummed steadily, the sparks fading, the station settling. Kale stood, bloodied but unbroken, a living testament to the human spirit. Lyra's eyes glowed in the shadows, a reminder that the threat had not vanished. But Kale had proven that humans could endure, adapt. The central hub of Ares 7 lay in partial chaos. Sparks still flickered from damaged conduits. Alarms blinked in staccato bursts, and overturned crates blocked the corridors. The faint hum of the reactor pulsed through the station like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. Kale stood at the edge of the hub, bloodied and exhausted yet unbroken. Lyra's growl echoed from the shadows. The Draxian had retreated temporarily, regrouping. She was calculating, scanning, learning from her previous mistakes. But Kale had not wasted this time either. Every corridor, every room, every corner of the station had been rigged with traps and clever diversions. Humans were small and weak compared to the Draxians, but their minds turned every disadvantage into an advantage. Kale moved quickly toward the maintenance corridors. He needed to find the other humans hiding in the station and lead them to safety. Supplies were limited, but he knew the humans could survive if guided strategically. Every trap he had set, every diversion he had created, was now part of a larger plan, one that showcased human ingenuity at its finest. In the storage area, Kyle found a small group of humans huddled together. They were frightened but alive. Seeing him, bruised but smiling faintly, gave them courage. "We have to move," Kale said quietly. "Follow me, stay low, and watch your step. We can use the station to fight back." The humans nodded, their eyes wide with fear and hope. Kale led them through shadowed corridors, ducking beneath exposed pipes and leaping over obstacles. He moved with precision, ensuring that every step avoided the traps he had already set. Lyra could be anywhere, but Kale's foresight had given them a small advantage, a chance. As they moved, Kale directed them to a room filled with old machinery. Here they could reinforce defenses and prepare ambushes. The humans worked quickly, setting up barricades and using spare metal panels to create choke points. Kale assigned positions carefully, ensuring each person had a task that suited their skills. Every action was deliberate. Every detail mattered. From the shadows above, Lyra watched. Her glowing eyes scanned the group, analyzing, calculating. She was impressed despite herself. Humans were not supposed to survive such encounters, yet here was a group that had been guided, protected, and strengthened by a single human's ingenuity. Kale was not just surviving, he was leading. He was turning fear into action, chaos into strategy. Kale checked the traps along the corridor one last time. Loose panels, tripwires, and improvised alarms were all in place. He moved back to the front of the group and whispered, "Stay close. Watch carefully. Timing is everything." The humans followed his lead silently, trusting him completely. Suddenly, Lyra moved. She leapt from a shadowed balcony, landing with a metallic clang in front of the group. Her claws flashed and her glowing eyes burned with fury. "Humans," she hissed. "You cannot hide forever. You cannot survive forever." Kale stepped forward, his body battered and bleeding, yet his stance firm. "We've survived this long," he said quietly, "and we'll survive a little longer. Humans don't quit." Lyra lunged at him with incredible speed. Kale sidestepped, allowing her momentum to carry her forward, then triggered a tripwire that sent a loose metal panel swinging into her path. She stumbled but recovered instantly, snarling. Kale grabbed a long pipe and swung it at her, forcing her back a few steps. Sparks flew from exposed conduits, and the hum of the reactor created an unsettling rhythm to their battle. Every movement Kale made was calculated, designed to maximize the station's environment against her. He didn't need to overpower her. He needed to outthink her. Lyra's attacks grew more precise and faster, but Kale anticipated each one. He ducked, rolled, and used the human's barricades to redirect her movements. Every clash of metal echoed through the hub. Humans might have been weaker physically, but they were clever, resilient, and adaptive. Kale embodied all of these qualities. He lured Lyra toward a corridor he had rigged with multiple traps. Cables, loose panels, and makeshift alarms were positioned to force her into a controlled path. She moved with speed and grace, yet the trap slowed her down, forcing her to focus on each step. Kale followed, his own movements precise, guiding the battle exactly where he wanted it. "Clever," Lyra hissed, narrowly avoiding a swinging panel. "But cleverness alone won't save you." Kale smiled faintly, ignoring the pain in his side. "Cleverness keeps humans alive," he replied. "And humans survive because we refuse to die." The humans Kale was leading took advantage of the distraction, moving silently through a secondary corridor. They followed his plan perfectly, avoiding traps and preparing ambush points. Kale's leadership had turned fear into organized action. Humans were no longer prey. They were a force to be reckoned with. Kale reached the final choke point he had prepared near the central elevator. Lyra was following closely, her speed unmatched. But Kale had one last advantage. Using the reactor controls, he triggered a temporary power surge. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and exposed conduits emitted short bursts of electricity. Lyra hissed, shielding herself from the flashes. Seizing the moment, Kale and the humans positioned themselves behind barricades. Using tools, metal scraps, and quick improvisation, they created a defensive formation. Lyra lunged again, but this time the humans were ready. Panels were thrown, tripwires triggered, and the environment itself became a weapon. Lyra struggled to advance, slowed by the traps and the humans' coordinated action. She hissed in frustration. Humans were clever, unpredictable, and relentless. Kyle moved like a shadow, positioning his group for maximum effect. Each human knew their role, each movement calculated, each trap timed perfectly. The battle raged on. Sparks flew, metal clashed, and alarms blared. Kale's strategy forced Lyra into a defensive position for the first time. She realized that strength alone would not win this fight. Humans survived because they adapted, thought ahead, and turned weakness into advantage. Kale had turned the station itself into a weapon. Finally, Lyra backed away, momentarily stunned by the humans' coordinated defense. Kale stepped forward, bloodied but standing, his stance firm. "It's over for now," he said. "We survived, and we will keep surviving." Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed. She had been defeated, at least temporarily, not by brute force, but by the ingenuity and courage of humans. She retreated into the shadows, silently calculating her next move. Kyle knew she would return, stronger and smarter. But he had proven something important. Humans were not weak. Humans were not helpless. Humans were clever, resilient, and unyielding. The humans gathered around Kale, their faces a mix of fear, relief, and admiration. They had survived against impossible odds because of one person's leadership, one person's courage, and one person's determination to outthink their predator. Kale's actions had turned despair into hope, fear into strategy, and chaos into survival. Kale pressed his hand against his wound, ignoring the pain. The station was damaged but functional. Humans were alive, ready to continue their fight. The battle had proven that even in the darkest places, even against the deadliest enemies, humanity's spark could not be extinguished. As the group moved through the station to regroup and plan their next steps, Kale looked back at the hub. The chaos he had created was not just a defense, it was a message. Humans survived not because they were strong, but because they were clever, adaptable, and fearless. Lyra's retreating form was a reminder that even the deadliest predator could not underestimate the human spirit. Kale led the group to a safer section of the station. He checked traps, reinforced barricades, and ensured that the humans were ready for whatever came next. This was not just survival, it was a statement. Humans were resilient. Humans were clever. Humans were a force that could not be easily defeated. In the silence that followed, the reactor hummed steadily. Lights flickered in a calm rhythm, and the humans gathered strength for the next challenge. Kale stood among them, bruised, battered, and bloodied, yet unbroken. The battle had been won not by sheer strength, but by courage, intelligence, and unyielding determination. And somewhere, in the shadows, Lyra watched. She had underestimated humans once, but she would not underestimate them again. Kale's survival had proven the truth that her species struggled to understand. Humans were not just prey. They were clever, resilient, and unstoppable when cornered. Kale's smile was faint but firm. Humans had survived this battle, and they would continue to survive. The spark of humanity burned brighter than ever, a beacon of hope, courage, and indomitable will. And as the station settled into temporary calm, Kale knew one thing for certain. Humans would continue to endure, adapt, and triumph, no matter the odds.